Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Brian and welcome back to the channel. Tomorrow, as most of you guys probably already know, is the release date of the RX 6800 and the RX 6800 XT. So today we are going to go over my parts list, a parts list that I put together for the RX 6800 XT. So what would I put into a system if I was buying the RX 6800 XT, which I am going to be trying to buy, and I'm going to be actually trying to build a system very similar to the one I'm going to talk about here today. Now, this build is going to come in at just about $2,000, and value-wise, as long as the benchmarks that were shown by AMD are to be true and they're accurate, I think value-wise, this is going to be one of the best value systems that you can get on the market as of right now. Yes, I know a $2,000 system is a lot of money, but that doesn't take away the fact that this could be a really good value system. So before we actually get into the parts that I have for the system, I want to mention two quick things. First off is going to be that pricing always changes every single day, and so I always recommend my parts list to be used as a guide, not the exact thing that you need to purchase. So since pricing changes quite often, I always try to provide alternatives for you guys in my videos. What I mean by that is the parts I have on the list, as well as any of the alternatives, swapping in and out, they should all perform roughly about the same unless I tell you guys otherwise. The second thing I wanted to mention is that supply on newly released PC hardware is almost always super scarce. This is not, something that's not normal. This happens all the time. It's happened on many launches before, and quite honestly, with the pandemic going on, it's probably going to be worse than previous years. The reason why I mentioned this is because you might not be able to get all these components right now. However, in a few months, when everything is kind of stabilized and there are options out there, you can actually go out and get these chips. This guide is still going to be useful. You can still follow what I talk about here today, and you can still get a gist on, building a good system based on this video. So with all of that said, let's start talking about the parts that I would put into a $2,000 RX 6800 XT gaming PC build. Starting off with the CPU, we have the Ryzen 9 5900X. This is a 12-core, 24-thread processor. It's incredible, okay? I've looked at a lot of different benchmarks on the new Ryzen 5000 series chips, and it's really impressive. So we're looking at a 3.7 gigahertz base clock. We're looking at a 4.8 gigahertz boost on one core. Compute performance is between 10 and 15% faster than the 3900X, which is the chip that I have in my system. The compute performance is about 20%-ish based on all the reviews I've watched, faster than the 10900K. As for gaming performance, it's about 15% faster than the 3900X, and it's about on par with the 10900K. So you're looking at a chip that's really good for gaming, and it's really good for productivity. You can be able to do whatever you want with the CPU. Very little to worry about. It's going to last you a long time since it has that 12 cores and 24 threads. And if you match it with other hardware that's compatible, you can also use the smart access memory, which we'll talk about more in a second. But before we do that, let's talk about the graphics card, which is going to be the RX 6800 XT. As I say, and basically any of these videos, find a good value one. We don't have reviews for the 6800 XT yet, so I would always wait for the reviews, watch a bunch of review videos, find out which one provides good cooling and also has a good price, and also provides some of the best FPS that the 6800 XT stack provides. So you want to find kind of a mix, but you can't do that until you watch reviews. So watch reviews for that. I actually put in the parts list for $700. I expect that's what it's going to be for the add-in board partner versions of it. So you're probably looking at about $700 for this card. But if it has performance, non-RTX performance on par with the 3080, this could be a really good competitive card, obviously on the market in general, and it'll be really good value fit for this build. Now let's talk about the CPU cooler, which I put the Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro for, which is a great high-end CPU cooler. You will need low profile memory for it. I think the maximum is, I wrote it down here somewhere, the max is 42 millimeters of clearance for it. So you will need low profile memory, which we chose on this one. If you decide you don't want the Dark Rock 4, or Dark Rock Pro 4, I should say, there's a ton of different good alternatives. If you want a water cooler, the X53 is a little bit more expensive, but it's good. The Kraken X53, and then the Kraken X63 is also really good, but that's a lot more expensive, almost double the price. There's a lot of good alternatives out there, but those are the two I would recommend. You want to go water cooling instead, and that would also open up compatibility with memory kit sticks, as well as if you wanted to get like an RGB kit. Looking at the motherboard, like I just mentioned, it is going to be a 500 series motherboard, and we're using the MSI B550 Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. This is a really good value board right now. It's coming in at about $160, and it doesn't make much sense to me because it's basically the one I have, which is the B550 Tomahawk, which is a great board, but it has Wi-Fi. So it's basically the board that I have plus Wi-Fi, and it's coming in for $20 cheaper. So it's about $160 as of making this video right now, and it's a super high quality VRM. It's a great board. The back IO is decent. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but it's fine. And this board is going to be absolutely great for a build like this. $160 for this, super good. If you don't want this board in particular because you're not supporting MSI, which is perfectly fine, because I know a lot of people have their quirks with MSI with some of the stuff that they've done recently and in the past, I would recommend getting a $115 to $200 board for this kind of build. Some good alternatives. A great alternative actually is going to be the Asus Prime X570-P. It'd be a great X570 board. It doesn't look as nice as like something like the Gaming Edge Wi-Fi, but it's, you know, again, it has PCIe 4 in the chipset and the CPU lanes, so that's great if you plan on using any of that. Plus, it's, you know, it's cheaper. The Asus B550M Tough boards are great. It's a great MATX board, and you can get it in Wi-Fi or non-Wi-Fi. Both are great boards, both great VRMs. And then there's so many other ones. If you don't want any of the boards I just mentioned, go check out the motherboard tier list just to make sure that the VRM is good quality. You don't want to be putting a 5900X with a bad quality VRM and seeing throttling or any of those issues. So just make sure whatever you do, just follow the motherboard tier list and get a good quality VRM for your system. There's a lot of them out there that are really cheap and affordable that could handle the 5900X no problem, as long as you're not going to be doing overclocking. So you do have a lot of options. Those are just some of my favorite ones that I like. As for memory, I put the Team Group T-Force Vulcan Z 32 gigabytes of memory. It's a $100 kit for 32 gigs, which is super cheap. It's cast latency 16. It's also low profile, which is what we need for the Dark Rock Pro 4. So that was another thing that I chose that kit for. And overall, if you don't like the kit or you want a kit that's RGB, make sure that you're getting a kit that is under 42 millimeters in height, because otherwise it won't fit the Dark Rock Pro 4 and you'll have to get a different cooler or you'll have to get a new kit and you guys will have a headache. You know, we don't want you to have a headache. Moving over to the storage, I do this in every one of my videos, so I'm getting kind of tired of this, recommending this, but it's basically a 512 gigabyte SSD and a 2 terabyte Seagate hard drive split. It's basically the cheapest way to get a ton of storage. And SSD is going to be for your boot drive, for your favorite games, some of your documents, whatever you programs, all that kind of good stuff. And then your hard drive is going to be for everything else. So like your documents, your pictures, your games that you play once in a while, or they don't have heavy load times or anything like that. Basically the slower games that are smaller, that aren't that big of a deal, that'd be, hard drive would be perfect for that. If you don't want the Silicon Power A80 512 gigabyte one that I recommend here, I recommend also the Inland Premium M.2. It's 512 gigs. Make sure you're getting the premium version. It's the better one. It's the higher quality one. And both the Silicon Power A80 and this one have DRAM. They're super fast and they're great overall SSDs for your system, for your boot drive, all that stuff. And you could also always drop the 2 terabyte Seagate hard drive if you wanted, and you could just get a 1 terabyte M.2 drive if that's the route you wanted to go. And you could always add another one down the road if you wanted more storage. That's always an option if you don't want that mechanical spinning noise in your system, which I totally get. And honestly, I don't even have a mechanical drive in my system for that exact reason. As for the case, I actually put the Fractal Design Mesh Phi C. This is a case I talk about a lot, or I have a lot in these videos, but for this build, like, it's like an $80 to $90 case. It's awesome value. It's great build quality. It's just a great overall case. If you want to spend a little less or a little more, the P400A, P300A, P500A are all great from Vantex. I love them. They are just, I don't know, Vantex does a great job making cases, just like Fractal Design does. And again, those three, the P series cases, in my opinion, are some of the best on the market for value and just airflow and all the good features and stuff like that. There's also the Dark Flash DLX21 mesh, which I did a review on this past Friday. That's that case right there that I have. I like the case a whole lot. It has good airflow, has a lot of space for, you know, fans, has great aesthetics in my opinion. It doesn't include any fans with the case, so you'll have to make sure you get fans with it if you want to use a case like that. But this one has a bunch of different premium features that are pretty cool. So anyway, the power supply. There's so many good power supply options out there, and power supplies often sell out quickly. So as I always recommend, the power supply tier list is great. For this build, I would stay in tier A, 100% stay in tier A, and I would look between a 750 and 850 watt power supply. You could probably go a little bit less wattage, but I wouldn't recommend under 750 myself. I think having the extra room is really beneficial just to make sure that your power supply is running efficiently and you're not, you know, overloading it at all. So for this build, I recommend a 850 watt fully modular 80 plus gold, Corsair RMX power supply. That's what I'm recommending for this one. It's gonna be plenty of power for the system. If you wanna add some, hard drives down the road, you'll be able to do that. It's gonna have plenty of power, and it's gonna last you a long time to come, multiple builds, which is super, super awesome. Again, if you want an alternative, check out the power supply tier list. Stay in tier A for this kind of build. If you're gonna be spending $2,000, you better be getting all of your components that are super high quality rather than, skip on stuff and, damaging your system. That's what I don't want you guys to do. So make sure you guys get a tier A power supply. They're more expensive, but they're worth it in the long run. And again, I would not recommend going under 750 watts for this kind of system. As for accessories, additional things that I would put into this build, I actually threw a kit of fans in here. It's an extra $50 worth of fans. Arctic P12s are great. They're super quiet. They're super cheap. They aren't RGB, so if you want RGB ones, then you'll have to buy RGB ones instead. But again, I love the Arctic P12s. I have two of them in mine. I have two white ones in mine they're super quiet and they do a great job moving air. There's a 5 kit. It's just under $50 as of right now, and they're a great kit of fans. If you want RGB, there's a ton of great RGB fans out there. Just search on Amazon RGB fans. Look up the fans that are all there at the very top, and Google search them, read some reviews, see what people say about them. There's a ton of great RGB fans out there. Fans are a lot easier to purchase nowadays than before. Just find one that you like to look at and that the reviews say they're pretty quiet and you should be pretty solid. There's one last thing I want to talk about prior to wrapping this whole thing up, and that's going to be probably one of the most important things that I talk about in this video, and it's going to be upgrade path for your CPU, your motherboard, and your memory. This is going to be the last generation that Ryzen is on the AM4 socket. So that means next year, when they come out with the Ryzen 6000, let's say 6000 series chips, you're not going to be able to upgrade from what you have now to that. You're gonna have to buy a new motherboard, new memory, as well as the new CPU. So you're not gonna easily be able to just plug in a new CPU. It's just not going to work because they're moving to, supposedly it'll be the AM5 sockets, as well as a new chipset, which I imagine would be the X670 or whatever they're gonna call it, chipsets, as well as DDR5 memory. So my suggestion is, if you're gonna be building a PC in this generation, make sure you get something that you're gonna be happy with for the next few years. The GPU is gonna be easily swapped out, but for those three things, the CPU, your motherboard, and your memory, make sure you get something that you're gonna be happy with, again, for the next few years. Don't be afraid to save a little bit more money if you need to and get a better system now if you really are dedicated on getting this system in this generation, because again, if you don't do it now, you're not going to easily be able to upgrade it like you've been able to with the previous Ryzen chips. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming in today and watching this video. If you guys liked it, please give me a thumbs up. If you loved it, consider subscribing for more tech content just like this. And if you have any questions at all, drop them in the comments below or in the community Discord page, which is absolutely free to join. There's a link in the description box below, and we would love to help you there as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.